Okay, Susan Constantine. With me is Master of Psychology, Deception and Body Language expert, author of The Complete Idiot's Guide to Reading Body Language. Okay, I'm going to take that the best possible intentions. But, Susan, I want you to listen. Christine, just turn this around for you guys to hear our cut 20. This is when he changes his story. Well, this is his first story about telling the police he checked the bodies, both of them, and then called 911. This is what he said that night.
My boy over there, I could see it was and I could see his brain and I ran over to Maggie and actually I think I tried to turn Paul over first. I tried to turn him over and I don't know, I figured it out. His cell phone popped out of his pocket. I started to try to do something with it, thinking maybe, but then I put it back down really quickly. Then I went to my wife.
Did you touch Maggie at all?
I did. I touched them both.
Okay.
I tried to do it as limited as possible, but I tried to take their pulse on both of them. And, I called 911 pretty much right away.
Okay, now see, that's got to sink in with the, as I'm calling it, the OnStar data of him opening and closing the car and opening and closing the car repeatedly in those minutes. Susan Constantine, what do you make of his body language there, right there?
Well, I think, is this the one we're talking about that he was in the police car? Because I don't see the video in front of me, but what I will speak to is...
That's it.
Okay, so when I'm watching his body language, first of all, let's go back a little bit. You're talking about paranoia. Paranoia, you should be able to see whites above the eye. That looks like this. The eyelid is lifted up, and you're in a state of paranoia, and your mouth drops. So I've seen this paranoia expression quite a bit with serial killers and people that are detached from their emotions. That was not paranoia. The other thing is that I notice is that in paranoia, your forehead will crinkle because your eyelids are raised. That's paranoia. And the same thing as what you're saying, Nancy, is you would see the fidgetiness, the anxiousness, the oddity of the language, the fast pace of the language, kind of going in and out. I've seen people on opioids when they are in that paranoid statement or stage, that wasn't it. His body language is left quite open. He has one hand that's rested with his fingers just slightly closed, more in a relaxed position. I did not see a sense of franticness about him. I didn't see a lack of concern or even fear. Those emotions were not present in that car.
Guys, Christine, could you pull up our cut 19? This is when Alex Murdaugh is questioned on getting out of the car and checking the bodies. Take a listen.
Looking at this data to show the vehicle parking at 10:05 and 55 seconds.
Yes, sir.
And 10:05:57, the Suburban arrives at the kennels. You agree with that?
Okay.
The 911 call was at 10:06:14.
Okay.
Just about 20 seconds later. You agree with that?
I think that sounds right. Yes, sir. I saw them. And I know I jumped out of my car, but I believe that before I checked them, in fact, I'm almost certain, then I went back and I got that's when I went and got my phone and I called 911.
I want to belabor this point, but that what you're saying here today, now that we have this data, that's not exactly how you expressed it to law enforcement in your prior statements. Is that correct?
No, sir, I disagree with that.
Okay, hearing that, Christine, let me know when we get Ann Emerson. outside of the courthouse because I want to find out how the jury was reacting to that. To you, Ronnie Richter, a lawyer for the Satterfield family, what do you make of what you're hearing?
Well, I mean, you hear stark inconsistency, right? So, but the worry is it getting lost on the jury? I'm with you. How are they receiving this? Do they see the stark difference between the two different accounts? And not just the difference, but obviously what's happened in the intervening span of time is Alex has come to learn the evidence that the state has, and chameleon-like, he's able to shape the story to match the new facts. You know, there's no way he could have done everything that he first described if his Yukon pulled up and 20 seconds later he's calling 911. So obviously he's shaping the story to fit the evidence.
Yes, now that the state's case has been made clear, his story is evolving. Now, there was a moment, and you can see it in our Cut 7, where Prosecutor Waters and Murdaugh square off over the first time he ever reveals publicly that he actually was at the scene of the murders. Take a listen to our Cut 7.
When I got arrested and I went to jail, we began reaching out to you to talk to you about all of these things, to try to tell you everything that I'd done, to give you all these details to help y'all go through these financial things. And up until the time that y'all charged me with murdering my wife and child, you would never give Jim Griffin a response to our invitations to sit down and meet with you.
Are you saying that you ever before yesterday reached out to anyone through yourself or through your attorneys and reached out to anyone in law enforcement or the prosecution and told them the story about the kennels? Are you telling me that?
What I'm telling you,
answer my
Mr.
question
Waters,
first, please, sir.
No, sir, I did not.
This questioning about him volunteering information on these charges violates his Fifth Amendment rights, and we strongly object.
Objection's overruled.
You know, for the record, he did not bring it. He was talking about financial
Sit down,
stuff.
Mr. Griffin.
And Susan Constantine, I think I hear you coming in, and I want to ask you, yes, I hear what Richter's saying, and he's got a really good point, but he's trying to apply logic to an illogical thinking pattern. Nothing Murdaugh did, stealing $9 million, being high on Oxy all the time, doing all the cover-ups he did, none of that makes sense for a guy that's got a great reputation, he's got a great family standing, he's got a beautiful wife, 2 sons, 3 properties that I know of. So none of this makes sense, Susan.
No, it doesn't make sense. And I knew that once he took the stand, because he's now trying his own case, that the more he speaks, the more he's going to reveal himself. Deception detection 101 is shut up and let him talk. Because when he keeps talking, he's going to start refuting the things that he's already stated. And then the state can come in and then go back and pull up what he had said and seeing how they contradict. So I think this was a big win for the state, because he's trying to try his own case and his lies are being revealed, especially when he's tried and he's tried and he's tried again, which is nothing but an attempted failure over and over again. So the word tried is a real big one for me.
Nancy, Susan Constantine, you're on it as usual. So you, Susan Constantine, what about it? What do you make of his demeanor? Every time he gets in a bad spot, he'll start snotting up or start talking about the darn chicken and the dog and the Bubba and the this and the spit cup. It just, for those of you that don't know, it's chewing tobacco and you spit it into a cup. Okay. That said, go ahead, Susan Constantine.
Well, cluck, cluck, cluck. I just had to say that one since we're talking about the chicken. So anyway.
You had to.
I just had to do it. So anyway, liars always move away from the truth, right? So they try to use as distractors and the chicken and all this other kind of jazz. But they also skip over all this incriminating information. So he's trying, like I said, he's trying to fit his narrative together, the timeline. So he intentionally skips over, minimizes, removes, omits crucial information because it's really important. So back to all of these little stress indicators. What's going on is his mouth is dry. We know that through just the vocal cords get dry, they become strained. He starts licking around in his mouth. He's pushing away the inside of his mouth away from his teeth because of the dryness of his mouth. that in itself is not a deception indicator, but when you combine it with what he's saying, his demeanor, with the anxiousness, the nervousness, and the crying, and the amount of crying. So what I had stated earlier in another show is that what he's doing is he's pushing these emotions. So on a scale of intensity, it didn't warrant that level of intensity, but he's forcing it. So you can see it in his forehead. His skin becomes extremely red, really flushed, and then you see all of a sudden the snot and everything else all flowing down. So he's pushing these emotions, and that's why for others that are looking at it are looking going, wipe your nose or something, because it's really disgusting. But he doesn't. He leaves it there so that everybody can see it. Because what he's doing, his need is to feel people to feel sympathy and compassion for him. And that was my concern with two of those jurors.
Susan Constantine, what do you make of jurors actually turning away, physically turning their backs?
This is really good information. Thank you so much for sharing this, because I'm not in the courtroom, but this tells me a lot. I love to watch the panel of the jury. One thing I want you to pay attention to is watch their eye blinking, how fast it's blinking, because that shows cognitive load and impatience. The fact is that they're shifting away from him. That's an anchor shift. That's huge, because that's saying that they are impatient. There's disbelief even when the head goes down. But when you start to see jurors mirroring one another and doing that at the same time, that's telling you what the majority is feeling. Anytime a juror moves their shifts, their anchor, their upper torso, or their legs, or even get up and shift to the other side of the chair, that is not a good sign, because when a person is connected and believes someone, they're more they're right directly in front of them, not turning away. Turning away is a really bad sign. It's exiting out. I want out of here. I'm tired of it. Get me out. I don't believe it.
To Susan Constantine, we heard Murdaugh puffing himself up, talking about, hey, I've tried a lot of cases, and I've been a civil attorney for a long time. Well, I'll be darned if I'm going to hire a lawyer that forgets as much as this guy does.
Yeah, you picked up what I had written down, and I love it. And I need to have this piece for what I'm doing in training class, because this is just priceless. So first of all, he starts with, it's not intentional. So what he's basically saying is he knows that they were omitted or they were removed, but it was like a mishap. Then he goes on to attack the accuser. These are all red herrings. He attacks the attorney. Then he uses the qualifier, I'm the attorney. Right? So then he goes through his years of education. Then he finishes with the corroboration, right? So he needs the other people. So other people, he needs a corroboration that what he had said to the jury. So when you look at these, there's all these qualifiers that he uses, but I can't recall, to my recollection, these are all classic 101 deception verbal indicators, and he's using them all. That's what is so mind-blowing to me, is that he should know this, but this goes to show you, even someone as narcissistic as he is, every liar is going to trip up, and he has blown it. It's perfect. It's priceless. Please give me that clip. It's great.